Darkcast Network. Out of the shadows come the best indie podcasts.
Hi, I'm Ashley, a true crime fanatic.
I'm Dan, and I don't know anything about true crime.
Together, we host Fuck That, a true crime podcast that covers cases that highlight important topics that are often overlooked, such as wrongful convictions, domestic violence, and social inequities, sprinkled in with the occasional case with spooky themes. If you are looking for your next true crime fix delivered candidly with a hint of sarcasm, you can listen and subscribe to bi-weekly episodes of Fuck That wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook and Twitter at @FThatPod and at @FThat_pod on Instagram.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his way.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan, how you doing? Post big game weekend?
Well, you know, I didn't get to watch the game because, like an adult, I had to go work all night. But I wish I'd watched it so I could see see all the reasons that people are outraged in the next day, right?
Are people outraged today?
Yeah. I mean, you got all kinds of stuff. The calls the refs made, the commercials, Kendrick Lamar's performance at the halftime show.
How is that controversial?
What's happening in Taylor Swift's box there at the Super Bowl, apparently.
Oh, yeah. See, that registers. Of course you would want to know what's going on in Taylor Swift's box.
Yeah. Well, you know, some people feel like Jay-Z has way too much control, creative control, over who performs or doesn't perform at the halftime show. So, you know, I mean, what are you going to do?
They not like us.
They not like us.
Back to Taylor Swift's box, Dylan. You were telling me earlier that she was booed
Yeah.
at the game.
Right.
This was by Phillies fans, right?
Yeah, Philadelphia Eagles fans don't play, right? There's some rough. They don't give a damn, from what I can tell.
Yes. I know very little about the footballs, but I do know that Phillies fans, the Eagles fans, are hardcore.
Now, you got to imagine this is the best representation of the Philadelphia Eagle fans at the Super Bowl in New Orleans, right? Because that trip's going to run you about probably, $20,000 or something.
Jeez, so much money
I saw people
spent this weekend.
quoting.
And you know who was not spending money this weekend? Me.
Oh, yeah. I saw people talking about $7,500, $8,000 for a ticket. I mean, but I guess if you got it, and that's what you want to do.
I guess. I am never going to spend that much money on a sporting event. It's not for me, bro.
No. But I hope everybody had fun last night. If you had your own little gatherings and such.
Yeah, the only thing I'm sorry is, we don't have friends and we didn't get invited to a party so that I didn't get to eat, a lot of snacks. I just kept thinking about dips and wings and foods last night.
I did miss the snacks.
While I ate, a bowl of rice for dinner.
So I think for dinner next week in my food planning, I'm going to plan a Super Bowl spread. And I'm just going to make it myself.
Okay.
And have that for dinner.
When I hear Super Bowl, I always think it's the bowl that has the leftover brownie batter in it because that's a Super Bowl to me.
Oh, you want to lick it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Dylan. We could go on about Taylor Swift's box. She's written quite a few songs about it over the years. But I don't want any Swifties to come for us because they're rabid. They're rabid people.
No, I don't want to piss off the Swifties either, but I'm afraid she's approaching a conundrum that many artists have dealt with before. When the core of your music is like teenage angst and longing, she's not a teenager anymore, right?
Don't tell her fans that.
She's heading to the middle life part of her life. Was she 35?
Yeah, she's in her 30s. Yeah.
Not long, she's going to be 40, right? So it's going to be like Weezer when we saw Weezer and they were in their mid-50s?
Yeah.
Heading towards 60?
Like trying to jump around, but like,
still singing.
We're limited.
Yeah, still directing us to pull the thread on his sweater, you know, and they're all like in dad clothes and stuff. So
singing about, basically they're just teenage dirtbags, but they're like, possibly grandfathers at this point. Who knows?
Yes, likely grandfathers. So I think she's going to have to deal with that in the next, 5 to 10 years. People are going to have to come to grips that she is not frozen in time.
I love your celebrity forecasting.
Yeah.
Should be a whole show where you just you could be like a Nostradamus.
Dylan
Damas, and you just predict what's going to happen in the future.
Okay. We should do that. It'd be a good bit.
All right, Dylan, are you ready to conclude part 2 of the Dennis Reid story known as the fast food killer, or around here we like to call him the Neck?
I was thinking about this story, actually, the first part. I was not familiar with it before I sat through the first part with you. And, it dawned on me that there's a very unique set of circumstances with these types of spree killers like this, right? I think there's a very particular type of danger and desperation that kind of sets in on these people in these situations, because they've got to know that they don't have much time. You know what I mean? I mean, surely, I don't know. It's just very scary. It's like there's no one who has nothing left to lose more so than like a spree killer such as this. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I do. I get what you're saying. Although I'm not exactly sure that this fella's thinking of anything kind of long term, because again, I mean, not to sound ableist, but his IQ's like 60.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm thinking more of a, someone's escaped kind of mentality, but I don't know. There's something vicious.
I just think all around, if you're a criminal, your days are numbered.
So his thinking is, I robbed these places. I can't imagine he's getting that much, right? I mean,
you know what he did with his money, which I didn't really add in the story, but I'll tell you what he did with the bulk of the money that he got from robbing from these businesses.
Bought some really big necklaces.
Well, clothes.
Yeah.
He bought a Ford Escort.
Oh.
He bought a car.
Hey, back in the day, the Escort was like that, dude.
It was.
They had the little Escort Sport. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Well, 97, that's really the year when the body style changed and it went from being kind of a boxy body style
to the rounded one.
To the more rounded.
Yeah, Ford rounded everything. They rounded the Taurus. They had the Pro.
They did.
They had the Escort. Everything was round.
Everything was round.
Yeah, and I kind of like the squares.
You did.
Yeah.
You like the squares. My family had I always say my family had a car. Okay, so for whatever reason, probably because, I grew up in a white trash redneck family. My dad's side of the family, if someone bought a car, it ended up being passed through multiple relatives' hands over the years.
Whoever needs it.
So, my aunt had a Ford Escort, brand new, and it was one of the boxy, bought in the early 90s. And so she had that for a bit, and then somehow it came into my grandma's possession. Then my grandma's driving it, and then my grandpa's driving it. And so this Ford Escort was passed around with among multiple family members for some years until I think it just finally died. But they would do this quite a bit with cars.
Probably had hundreds of thousands of miles.
It probably did. But I do remember going to Florida, right after she bought this car. I was maybe 12. Going to Florida with my aunt and her husband and my 2 little cousins.
Oh.
We went to Disney World and we drove the Ford Escort.
That seems like a lot of people in an Escort.
Yeah. So I'm a big kid. I'm 12 and I'm stuck in the back seat with 2 little kids that are 4 and 6 or something, or maybe even younger than that. Yeah, it was a nightmare. Because one of my cousins, and I mean, he's still a shit as an adult, but he was a shit little kid.
Right.
And I'm in the back seat with this little hyperactive shit kid.
Oh my God. See,
and I immediately regretted my decision to join them on this trip to Disney World.
That go along with someone like that trip, it always kind of sucks. You know what I mean? I mean, it's cool you're going on a trip, but there's elements of it that suck. For one, you have absolutely no control, right? Well, of course you were still a kid.
Well, I'm a kid, so I
Yeah.
don't have any control over anything ever.
I crammed into a Geo Metro hatchback one time with 2 parents, a small kid, and then they're, almost my equal age. And I'm like 17-ish at this point. Their other daughter who was almost my age. So here you have 2 teenagers, a little kid, and 2 adults in a Geo Metro
Like a hatchback?
with the luggage.
You sitting with the luggage?
No, well, I'm
Oh.
saying you got to have you got all your stuff, your
Oh.
little bags. Yeah, that was cramped. We were crammed. Yeah, we went to the beach.
Yeah.
And like an hour out, I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Look. When you're like us, Dylan, and other listeners could probably relate. When you're like us, because they ain't like us, right?
They not like us.
When you like us, and you grew up poor and you're like underprivileged, like getting to go on a trip is awesome.
Right.
And so, yeah, at 12, the thought of getting to go to like Florida, Disney World, SeaWorld, like all these cool places that I probably like otherwise would never get to go visit because we was poor.
Right.
And yeah, and of course my parents were not going to prioritize taking me on a trip that's special for me. Like, oh yeah, she wants to go to Disney. It would be like they were going to take me where they wanted to go.
Dude, I didn't see the ocean till I was an adult.
Yeah, well, a lot of people experience this.
But it's not like I live freaking 2,000 miles from the ocean. It's not that far, right?
Well,
Grew up most of my life
Again.
around Western North Carolina and Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee.
underprivileged. It happens, bro.
Gosh, it's just like a 5-hour ride, Ma.
I know. So my aunt, I mean, she was definitely a parent that like kind of geared, I guess, her outings, more toward her kids, which is awesome because a lot of parents don't do that. So when she invited me to go, I was tickled to death, and of course it wasn't that my dad would, was like, he probably just didn't want to take me on the trip because he's a curmudgeon, but he offered to pay. So like he helped finance my part of the trip. But then I'm stuck in this car. And then the only other thing I remember about the trip really was getting the worst fucking sunburn ever. And if you've ever seen me, I'm like beyond pasty white. I'm so pale. And I got roasted. I looked like a fucking lobster. I was red the entire trip and miserable.
So as soon as you got down there and started doing stuff, you got sunburned and were sunburned.
Well, like the
rest
first
of the time.
day, I go climb in the pool, and I remember my aunt saying, like, you need to put on some sunscreen. And I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I burn a little, but then it turns to tan.
What
and
were you
just
talking about?
Getting roasted.
You've never tanned in your life. Look
That's
at you.
not true. I turn a little darker shade of really white.
But you try to run around like you're just going to have a good base tan start up.
I have to work at it, but I can get a tan. It takes like 6 months.
Well, you couldn't tell 12-year-old you nothing.
No, shit. I was in Florida. I had on like my new bikini.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Right.
the early 90s, so it was like plaid, like a plaid bikini. I think I'm like the shit, floating around in a pool at a motel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got burnt up, and so the rest of the trip I was just like, oh my gosh.
Oh, that sounds miserable. Then you had to go through all those parks and shit where it's hot and the asphalt.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. All the pictures, like my face is just so bright red.
My gosh, I had a fake ID when I went on my trip with
Oh,
this
gosh.
family. Yeah. And
You sound like a little orphan, like when I went on a trip with this family that just like took you in. And
well, I worked with this guy. We
Took you
both
on a
had our
trip.
heads shaved, and we were both, looked similar enough. They just glance. And once I figured out that worked, oh gosh, I'm having drinks at every dinner.
you was wildin'.
I'm going to the bar. I was wilding out.
Dang.
Yeah, doing whippets on the strip in Myrtle Beach in
You
the
were-
t-shirt
I was
shop.
gonna say you're flashing your titties, aren't you?
No,
Trying
I
to get
didn't.
some beads.
No,
Myrtle Beach.
I didn't have to flash my titties. They just give me the beads.
I figured you was flashing. You just wanted everybody to see them.
You're
You're up on a balcony like, hey, girls, you want to see some of these B cups? What about you, fellas? Yeah.
That's right. Let me get those beads.
You slut.
Man, you might imagine how many bad decisions were made in New Orleans over the weekend. That's probably just regular time down there, huh?
I was going to say, I'm not sure New Orleans is a place of
Good decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, though. I want to go back.
Dude, I love New Orleans, but I've made some bad decisions there as well.
All right.
Like
So,
having 6 or 7 of those hurricane drinks.
oh, wow. So let's get back to it. This freaking asshole, Mr. Reid, what's he into?
Okay, let's talk about this big neck bastard.
Yo, thick neck bitch.
He's true, yeah. I ain't lying when he said got a big old neck.
He had to spend like $17,000 on a herringbone necklace. Talking about, you need a thicker necklace, sir.
He has a
It's
hard time with the top button.
Yeah.
Can't find a necktie to fit him.
No.
Got to get a custom necktie. On April 23rd of 1997, a new mother, Angie Holmes, was ready to work the 5 p.m. shift at the Baskin-Robbins. She was scheduled to work with Michelle Mace, and this is at the 2531 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard location, also known as Highway 79, which is a main thoroughfare through Clarksville, Tennessee. Around this time, Clarksville was a budding community with a population of around 100,000. It felt relatively safe at the time, so the owner of the Baskin-Robbins only had 2 security cameras. One pointed at the drive-thru and another pointed at the door, which was facing out to the main road. This, again, we discussed this the first episode. It's one of those security cameras where you've got a monitor, you've got a VHS tape recording.
Right. Yeah, and
it's not high tech.
That was the general set. That was high tech. I mean, that was the tech of the time.
Well, back then, yes, but now, no. Looking back, no.
Yeah, but I mean, even up through modern day, I think it's a running joke in true crime. Like, there's so many shitty cameras, I'm like, why is your security camera?
Like, your Ring camera is so clear.
Yeah,
that
they're
you can
amazing.
literally see, like, a zit on someone's nose 40 feet away.
But you have closed circuit, security
business,
cameras.
and
it's like, I'm looking at the damn Bigfoot footage from back in the 70s.
It's just a grainy, like, is that Slender Man? I can't tell. The store was located between an Amoco gas station and an insurance company. Behind the building, there was a storage facility, like a self-storage facility. Dunbar Cave State Park, a popular destination, was only about 5 minutes away from this location. Nearing closing time, Lavanda Zimmerman visited the store and leisurely enjoyed an ice cream. She had gotten off late and was waiting to pick up her son. So she had some time to kill, before I think her parents had her son and they were at church. So she was like, I have some time to kill. So she just goes in this Baskin-Robbins, gets her an ice cream. She's kind of sitting around watching. She sees Michelle Mace mopping around the cake cooler. There was a man who came in the store and started yelling at the employees.
Oh.
She witnessed that. She thought that was weird. She was even mentioned to one of the employees, like, wow, he was obnoxious.
Well, Baskin-Robbins was the shit back in the day.
Dude, I would have some Baskin-Robbins right now.
No, but there wasn't. I mean, you were talking about this.
31 flavors, baby.
There weren't so many. Nowadays, you can't throw a rock without hitting some high-end creamery, right?
Or custard.
Or custard.
Or
shout out Andy's Custard. Might get one later, just saying. But
yeah, now you're talking.
God, it's so good. But back... maybe just where I lived, you never saw anything like that. Like Baskin-Robbins, where they had this good quality ice cream, it was awesome, right?
Dude, where I lived, the nearest Baskin-Robbins was like 35 minutes away at the mall.
Dude.
So you had to drive from Waynesville to Asheville to get a Baskin-Robbins. So if I was shopping at the mall and conned my parents into getting me a cone, I thought I was the shit.
Now, some gas stations would have some ice cream.
We talked about this, that there were some gas stations that would have ice cream. And that was like a big deal also, because then you could go in and get a cone.
Yeah, and they're trying hard as they can, but that wasn't exactly high-end ice cream. Look, I know all about this.
It was pet ice cream. It was good.
You can't let it thaw and refreeze.
Then you get those
That's what creates the crystals, and that's what affects your creaminess. Oh my God! So if you control the temperature from production to in your mouth completely and keep it climate control and perfect, that's how you're going to get
Can I ask you a question?
A creamy, rich experience on your tongue.
So as a kid, Baskin-Robbins has 31 flavors. As a kid, if you got to pick out a cone, what was your go-to ice cream flavor as a child?
I didn't get to get cones.
Oh.
Must be nice. I didn't get to go to fucking Baskin-Robbins, dude.
I mostly got to go to the gas station and get a cone, but
Yeah, I mean, it must have been nice. We ain't had no gas.
well, I'm sorry that like my parents were employed.
Well, I'm saying, there's different levels of poor. You talking about y'all was some poor white trash about shit.
Well, we was poor, but we had ice cream money sometimes poor.
Y'all had like 401ks and shit. Y'all wasn't poor.
That's not true. They didn't get 401ks till later.
Well, I'm just saying, there's different levels. There's different levels.
Look, I had teenage parents. Okay, they was not rich.
Okay,
my mama had me when she was 16. Okay,
Yeah.
my daddy was a high school senior and drove a school bus in the morning before school, and that was his part-time job. So my parents didn't have any money. Trust me.
I'm not going to do this with you because you ain't never cashed in food stamps to get the coins back to buy toilet paper and shampoo. Okay. So,
look, I was a little trailer park kid. Don't judge me.
I'm just saying.
We was poor.
Don't make me poor flex on you, dog.
I'll poor flex on you.
You ever had a mustard sandwich for dinner?
No.
Motherfucker.
No. My mama would spend the $1 and get that Carl Budding ham that was like
shit, I wish.
Paper thin.
That shit used to be like 69 cents a
yeah,
pack.
I know.
Bro.
It was. Man, I loved that shit as a kid, though.
Oh, no, we ate good. We had some food stamps.
Well, see, that's good.
My mama cooked.
See, my parents had to work, and
I love
we
my
never
mama.
had food stamps.
I ain't even playing. I love my mama. She did good. She did best she could.
Okay, so back to our story. Lavanda is just chilling, like seeing customers drive up, get a cone, drive through, what have you. And this is around like 9:45. Like I said, she's watching them clean up. Michelle Mesa's mopping around the cake cooler. They're getting ready to close down. Around this time, Michelle's mother, Connie Black, called to confirm that she would pick her daughter up from work. Connie told Michelle, "Call me when you're ready." At 9:45 p.m., Paul Reid stopped at the Clarksville Texaco gas station and purchased $11.95 worth of gas and bought a Pepsi using his store credit card. He tossed the receipt in the front seat of his Ford Escort.
So it's like his Texaco card?
Yeah, like a store credit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like a Texaco gas card.
Right.
You really needed to ask about that?
Well, I was making sure.
Okay. So he tosses the receipt in the front, in the front seat of the car, which I have a really bad habit of tossing the receipts in my car.
Yeah, I got receipts everywhere.
I was going to say law enforcement could totally map out where I've been and what I've been doing based on all the receipts in my car.
Well, she was at Chick-fil-A around lunch, so it looks like she's got a large Sunjoy and
yes, exactly.
And Andy's custard around 11 p.m.
All this bitch does is eat. There's all these receipts from the grocery store too. Right. So, that'll come into play later. When they search his vehicle, he's in the area.
So that proves that he was there.
Yes.
Okay.
So soon after, a woman named Catherine Naylor was headed for her home in Kentucky when she was cut off by a green Corvette turning into the Baskin-Robbins parking lot. Like it kind of came over in front of her. It didn't have a turning light, on. So of course she's just like, whoa, slows down. And while she slows down and is probably mumbling, fuck her under her breath or whatever, as this car cuts her off and is turning into the parking lot, she sees a red car is parked in the store's lot, despite the chairs being on top of the tables in the store, and she can see a mop bucket in the center of the store. So she's thinking, okay, the store's closed. They're getting ready to close.
Right.
So here this asshole did this maneuver and it's probably not even going to get some ice cream. Lavonda Zimmerman was preparing to turn left out of the parking lot when she noticed this red car entering into the Baskin-Robbins parking lot. And she noticed it because it reminded her of the vehicle her husband drove, which was an Excel. I don't remember the Excel.
The Ford Excel?
Was it a Ford? I don't know.
Or what's that, a Toyota?
I want to say it was a Toyota.
I think it's a Toyota.
Yeah, so she thought this red car looked a lot like her husband's vehicle. A couple from Austin P University hurried into the store, noting they only had about 10 minutes before closing. While they were in the store, they would later describe seeing a scraggly man, but they would not identify him as Paul Reid. Another man was on his way to work the third shift, which began at 10:30 p.m. He noted a slow-moving red vehicle, which also did not use a turn signal, creeping around the Baskin-Robbins. And he thought the car seemed to be slower than the traffic around them. So it stood out.
Right.
This red car seems like it's creeping by. Yeah. So later, when he hears that there was some kind of problem at the Baskin-Robbins, he remembered the car and thought, oh my gosh, they've been robbed. Another man named Jerry Pardue, who worked nearby, clocked out at 10 p.m. He had gone on a few dates with Michelle Mace, and he knew Angie, her co-worker. As he passed by the store, he noted Angie's Geo Metro was parked near a red car. He didn't recognize the red car, and he didn't know Angie that well, so he reconsidered stopping in. A lot of times he would stop in to say, hi to Michelle, but he wasn't sure she was there. The red car was parked near the storage business, kind of facing the drive-thru, from what he remembered. Vondra Case, a Shoney's manager, was Paul's new girlfriend. She lived 3 miles from the Baskin-Robbins and less than a mile from the Texaco gas station. She was also neighbors with Michelle Mace's family. Paul usually phoned Vondra a few times a week, and she had returned home on this particular day, well, I should say this particular night, from a shopping trip with her daughter, and she noticed that Paul had not called. He hadn't left any messages on the answering machine. Usually the conversations were centered on Paul wanting to get his job back at Shoney's.
If only I could get back in the Shoney's.
I just need to be in Shoney's good graces.
Man, I want to get the little Shoney's buffet, man.
I just want some of them little baby muffins on the breakfast bar.
The breakfast bar is, it's the tits.
Dude, I remember before they closed down the Shoney's, then they opened a new Shoney's, and nobody goes there. I can't believe it's still open. This is back in our old hometown. The old Shoney's, I think it was like Friday night, had a seafood buffet.
What?
And people were like fighting each other to get in the door to like get a crab leg.
Oh, because they had the good stuff.
I guess. I never went. I'm not in the habit of eating buffets and not eating seafood buffets unless I'm at the beach where seafood is fresh.
Would you go to a breakfast buffet?
Look, I want all the sneeze guards on the buffet. They just gross me out.
Well, you say that, but I was mad the other day because the place didn't have a Chinese buffet.
Yeah, I know. You were pretty heartbroken.
I just knew I was going to go in there and get all my little faves, test everything out, get a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Well, I know. I wanted Chinese food. I like never want Chinese food, but I wanted Chinese food. So we find this restaurant. It's kind of highly rated. I was like, ooh, people say it's great. I'm thinking they have a buffet. When we arrive, we are sadly disappointed to find out they don't have a buffet.
They never do buffet.
And I was thinking of all the different foods I was going to sample. So then I had to actually just order something from the menu.
Yeah.
And then I felt like the whitest person on earth when I'm like, I'll have the General Tso's chicken. Because... But I really wanted some. And I just knew the server was judging me.
Yeah. She was like,
you basic bitch.
Yeah.
She's probably like, let me bring you pumpkin spice with that. And I'd be like, fuck yeah, I like pumpkin spice lattes. What?
So it made me realize that all these years I've been getting a good deal on Chinese food because that was kind of expensive to just have the one thing.
Just to have the entree.
Yeah.
I thought it was reasonably priced.
I mean, it was good. It was high quality. Anyway.
You're cheap. It was only like $13.
You're a damn lie. It was like damn nearly $50 with tip, bud.
Yeah, but you had like appetizers and stuff too. Don't
That was the tiniest spring roll known to mankind.
You ordered one.
That's because they like $3 a piece.
I had dumplings. You're full of shit. So on the night of April 23rd, 3 young people left a church softball game and decided to grab a McDonald's meal on their way home to Holly Schmidt's house, which was across the street from the Dunbar Cave entrance. As they got out of the car, Jay Smith noticed a red vehicle parked in the main lot. It wasn't parked between the lines, which he thought was odd. It was also after 10:30 p.m., which meant the Dunbar Cave was closed to visitors. So, of course, he notices, like, that's odd.
Yeah, and these are the
state park is supposed to be closed.
And these are the types of things at the moment you don't really give it much thought. It's just in passing you'll think something like this, like, oh, that place looks closed. or the park's already closed. Why would somebody be there?
Right.
I mean, it's not a big deal at the time, but these are very important details after the fact.
Jay also happened to be friends with Michelle Mace. Later, another friend named Sean would step out from Holly Schmidt's house to smoke, and he noticed 2 vehicles parked in the lot in opposite directions so that the driver's doors faced one another, and he saw that the engines were running. He could hear them. And so he kind of notices, but he didn't really pay much attention to it. None of the people knew that a man had entered into the Baskin-Robbins store at closing, had used Angie's apron to tie her hands behind her back, or that he had driven Angie and Michelle to Dunbar State Park in his red car using child safety locks to prevent the women from escaping, and that he had threatened them with a knife.
Oh, my God.
The man forced the young women out of the vehicle into the darkness and down a path that led into the park. Both women's hands were bound behind their backs. It was cold, with temperatures dropping down near about 50. Michelle Mace was walking ahead of Angie and decided this was her chance, since she kind of probably didn't want to leave her friend, but this is not a good situation.
No, you've already been taken away from a place.
They're going into a park. It's dark. It's closed. There's no one around.
You're tied up.
This man has a knife.
This is scary.
It's very scary.
And at a certain point, your own survival instinct kicks in.
So as she's walking ahead, she suddenly turns left and takes off running, back up the path which goes into the woods. She headed toward a friend's house. She knew Holly, who lived across the street. So she's thinking, if I can just get to my friend's house. That's when the assailant grabbed Angie by the back of the head and cut the girl's throat to the neck bone, transecting the carotid artery and jugular vein. Angie crumpled, fell to the pavement, and then partially into Swan Lake's water at the park. Michelle Mace ran as hard and as fast as she could, but was hampered by her wrists being tied behind her back. It was like knocking off her balance. And think about that, trying to run with your hands behind your back.
Well, I'm going to guess that's something you never, ever in your life have attempted, likely. And there's a reason your arms swing and stuff when you're walking run. It does that. It's like your tail if you're an animal.
Well, yeah, it's dark.
Right.
You can't see.
You're
I'm sure
scared
the
to death.
visibility's bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're terrified. The man was behind her. He was slashing the knife through the air, like just trying to get her. Quickly, the man was on Michelle and cut her throat. He then stabbed the girl 14 times. She fell less than 100 feet from where Angie's body lay. Michelle was only 300 yards away from her friend's house.
Can we say this guy's fucking brutal?
Yes.
I mean, the execution style killings, a couple times before, the very up close and personal nature of his crimes. I mean, God.
And can we also just, for a moment, discuss, I mean, we know he's a piece of shit, but what a piece of shit. He's such a fucking coward. He's targeting young people.
Right.
People he knows he can overpower.
And intimidate.
Because he's a fucking piece of shit coward, right?
No, it totally is.
According to the doctor who performed the autopsies of both victims, it took somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes for each girl to bleed to death. They would have been conscious about 80% of this time. So they knew they were laying there. They knew they were going to die.
Would your throat cut that severely? I mean, and you still have a period of consciousness? I mean, and the feelings? You're going to feel things. You're going to smell things, blood. I mean, that's really terrible.
Angie, who had a baby at home, wanted to be a nurse, and Michelle, known as the family jokester, lay in the dirt and muck just knowing they were going to die. So these women, their final moments, so sad and frightening. It was 11 p.m. when Barbara McWilliams and Martin McIntyre, who worked at the Riverbend Maximum Security Prison, stopped in the parking lot of Dunbar Cave State Park. These are the two cars that were kind of parked like opposite, the engines running, that the smoker guy could see
right
across the way. So they just stopped here to have a chat. The two friends walked over to a sign to see what the park had to offer. They didn't observe any other vehicles in the lot. After they visited for about 20 minutes, they went their separate ways. And at the time, they had no idea that they had stood within a few feet of two dying girls. Michelle's brother, Lonnie, had gone to the Texaco gas station to grab a snack, and this was just around 10 p.m. So he knew the Baskin-Robbins was closing, and he told his mother, Connie, that he would pick up Michelle. Like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to grab a snack, I'll just pick her up. Because again, it's like, 3 miles away, a mile away. It's not very far. Angie's Geo was parked in the lot. So after 15 minutes had passed, Lonnie, who's waiting kind of impatiently, uses his cell phone and calls home. He speaks to his sister, Katie, and asks her to call the Baskin-Robbins store. Katie returns a call to Lonnie a few seconds later saying she's tried the store, no one's picking up. At that point, he decides to enter the store. The door was unlocked, which was strange considering the store was closed. It only took a few seconds for Lonnie to realize the building was empty. Lonnie decided to call 911 and report the women missing.
Yeah, and I don't blame him, honestly.
After this, he calls home again and speaks to Katie. Once Katie is aware that her sister's missing, Lonnie's on the scene. He's called 911. He's waiting for police. She takes it upon herself to call Angie's boyfriend at home. He had spoken to Angie earlier and expected her to be home on time. She hadn't indicated that they were busy. It seemed like they were closing up. She should be home in any minute. Katie tells him, I'll come over. I'll watch your baby while my boyfriend Harold Jones accompanies you to the store.
Okay.
By then, Connie and Garrett Black, Michelle's parents, were in the parking lot with Lonnie and some other family members. They're waiting and kind of searching the area, hoping to see the women walking around the parking lot, checking the Amoco, the insurance parking lot, the self-storage facility behind the building, not really knowing what's going on. So they're waiting, and someone finally places another call to 911 around 10:49 p.m. So now 2 calls have been made to 911. Angie's boyfriend, Tabaris, entered the store and noted that the register was open. Everything was in order to close the store. He found Angie's purse in the break room. Money was still in the wallet. Clarksville police officers had been called to an alcohol-involved domestic dispute, then to an assault. 911 operators would later say it had been hard to hear Lonnie on the cell phone call, and that had not been considered an immediate threat. So it took officers about 20 minutes to arrive at the Baskin-Robbins.
So like a low priority call.
Yes.
Get by there and check it out when you can.
Later, changes would be made to the county's dispatchers regarding delays in emergency calls because of this case.
Well, yeah.
Right. Police found that the cash in the register drawer was empty and the safe top had been removed. A count would later show that $1,565 was missing, so a little over $1,500 was missing. There were 4 startup bags containing $100 each for an opening shift.
Like change for the drawer and stuff
like a few, ones, fives, tens. So there were 4 of those bags. They were all missing. The VHS tape was missing from the video surveillance system, and there were no signs of the 2 women. Angie and Michelle's loved ones, including Connie Black, that's Michelle's mom, were gathered outside while police conducted a walkthrough of the Baskin-Robbins. Connie watched a red car pull into the adjacent parking lot. For some reason, she felt that this car's presence was somehow connected to her missing daughter and walked toward it. Suddenly, the car sped out of the parking lot.
Oh, gosh.
Now a crime scene, the store was being processed for fingerprints and shoe prints. Yellow police tape is being placed around the perimeter, and the families are left without answers. Early the following morning, a retired military man was walking his dog around Swan Lake at Dunbar Park. When he came around the curve, his dog yanked at the leash and began running back and forth at the lake, whining. The man got closer to the water's edge, and that's when he spotted the body of a female face down in the shallow water, her hands bound. He raced to the ranger station where a group of students from a local elementary school were gathering. That field trip was immediately canceled, as you can imagine.
I bet those kids will never forget that field trip.
Well, how messed up to know. I mean, even as a child, you know, you're probably somewhat aware of what's happening.
Oh, I'm sure it quickly,
news.
because in their...
That there was a body found at the location where you are supposed to be having a field trip.
I guarantee the kids found out through parents, through people talking, through teachers, just...
Police arrived swiftly and began cordoning off the area. Near the bodies, officers discovered a pair of vinyl gloves lying on the ground. They also discovered, of course, the second body. It was a female lying on her stomach with her arms bound behind her back. On April 24th, around 3:57 p.m., Paul called Vondra Case, the girlfriend. He said he had planned to stop by her home the night before, but it was too late. When Vondra asked what he'd been doing in Clarksville, Paul said he had driven to Guthrie, Kentucky to buy lottery tickets, and she didn't really think much of it because she often drove into Kentucky to buy cigarettes. As news of the girls' murders became headlines, volunteers began sitting in the parking lots of fast food restaurants. Teenagers refused to work in the industry for fear, many quitting their jobs. The governor approved $10,000 in reward money for information leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever killed Angie and Michelle. Now, Dylan, if you recall from episode 1, for some reason, I don't know if it was that big neck, but Paul Reid did not lack for girlfriends. Okay? You know what they say about a guy with a big neck?
No.
I don't
because that's not a saying.
Well, if you recall, back in Texas, Paul was dating a woman at some point named Cindy Wheeler. Well, she receives a letter dated April 26th of 1997 from a Dr. Paul Reid.
Oh, I didn't know he was had a doctorate.
He is inviting her to Nashville, where he explains they're going to have this exciting time while she's visiting. He had some money saved. He was going to bring her to Nashville for a vacation. It was going to be awesome.
I want to go to Nashville.
We'll go to Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, the Bluebird. We'll go all around. Ernest Tubbs Record Store.
I want to go down where that guy tried to blow up that AT&T building.
I can take you there.
Yeah, I want to see that.
You want to go to, was it Luke Bryant's restaurant where that other dude threw a chair out the window?
I thought it was Luke Bryant. I thought it was a star, a celebrity of some sort, right? Threw the chair off the roof
where
or something.
the other country singer threw a
and hit the
chair
police or some shit.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sure he got justice.
So there's a lot of pressure on the Nashville police as well as the Clarksville Police Department to make an arrest. Several suspects were questioned, but nothing panned out. Cindy Wheeler arrived for this glamorous vacation May the 3rd through the 9th, so she's there for 6 days. Paul Reid didn't have a job and only had $66 in his checking account, but the couple stayed at a Motel 6 and dined out for all their meals. They went to the Waffle House.
What?
He treated her to the Hard Rock Cafe.
Damn.
Yeah. Paul paid for everything in cash. They took a cruise on the General Jackson riverboat. So he's whining and dining her.
Tell my girl, you go ahead and double those hash browns. You get them covered or hammed or chunked.
Do you want some gravy on those?
Yeah.
Don't worry, I got it. I got the tip.
You want a Coke to go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the meantime, he's still wooing Vondra Case.
Oh.
So he's got a girl here for the week, but he's still talking to Vondra, you my girl, you my girlfriend. So he's just he's a player.
He's a playa with an A.
Yeah. And they'd be hating on players.
They do, but they should just hate the game. Don't hate the playa.
That's what I always tell them.
Hey, if they ain't hating, you ain't doing nothing, right?
Later, Vondra would wonder if Paul was playing her because she was a Shoney's manager and had the power to rehire him.
Wait a second. This entire trip is about getting rehired?
No, Cindy is from Texas. That's the lady he's spending all the big bucks on, taking her to the Waffle House.
Okay.
And this fancy room at the Motel 6. Vondra is the Shoney's manager he's been dating.
Oh.
So he's wooing both women.
Oh, but the other woman's basically just about getting rehired at Shoney's.
Well, Vondra begins to wonder later on if maybe he's just sweet talking me because he wants his job back.
He wants his job back in premium hours on the schedule.
Now, Jose Gonzalez, if you recall, he was the surviving victim of the McDonald's attack.
Yes, he valiantly fought for his life.
Yeah, so he's continued working as part of his therapy, but he's having horrible nightmares. They end up showing him something like 1,200 mugshots, seeing if he can place the suspect.
Right.
No luck. In May of 1997, Paul Reid Sr. passed away due to cancer. When Paul Jr. shows up at the funeral home in Texas, he's wearing a striped short-sleeve shirt, some lime green shorts, socks pulled up to his calves, and tennis shoes.
To a funeral?
He's rocking the dad look at the funeral.
No, this is not dad. This is way too flashy for the dad look.
Now get this,
It's
Dylan.
too bright.
I had to mention this because this man has a thing for paper hats. Just wait. Paul is also wearing a paper Burger King crown.
Oh, well, those are pretty cool.
His sister Jenna asked, Paul, what on earth are you doing? He said, I'm not Paul, I'm King Paul.
Oh, you should. And offers his hand for her to kiss.
His sisters insist, Paul, you cannot go inside dressed like that. You need to change. Like, leave, change clothes, and you can come back. But he refuses, and he says, this is the way I am. This is the way I'm going. Both sisters are afraid of Paul. He's threatened them in the past. If you recall, he's tried to sexually assault both sisters. He's threatened to kill them. They're going to be taco meat.
Well, yeah, I can guarantee is the horrible things this man's doing that he was no walk in the park to be around growing up, right?
Finally, the sisters relent and let him go into the chapel at the funeral home. King Paul gave a long, incoherent speech praising their father for being a wonderful, loving parent, which was a lie. It's like never around. Later at Janet's house, Paul will introduce himself to her church friends as King Paul. Given his history, no one in his immediate family was surprised that he'd gone off the deep end. Now, can you imagine this guy at a funeral?
No.
Wearing a crown?
It's a spectacle.
A paper crown? Yes.
These bright clothes, just inappropriate clothes, period. Shorts, socks pulled up to your knees. I mean, what are you doing?
Probably wearing a pair of New Balance.
And, well,
Some
he's
Reeboks.
King Paul. I'm King Paul. And a paper crown, a Burger King crown.
Yeah. This is the way
I mean, if he wasn't such a monstrous asshole, I would almost appreciate what he's doing.
his lime
Just
green
trying to-
shorts.
Well, he's just trying to be.
I wonder if they were duckhead shorts because
You-
this is the late 90s.
I think they could have been duckhead shorts.
These are probably duckhead shorts.
Which is the shit. They had all the bright colors and the pastels. But he's just being his authentic self, you know?
I do know, Dylan.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. Besides, but he's a killer too. So
I know I only whip out the brightly colored duck heads when I have a special event. Shoney's manager, Mitchell Roberts, was surprised and suspicious when his former employee, Paul Reid, knocked on his door. Paul had been fired in February for throwing a plate. Paul apologized for his previous behavior and explained that he had, quote, lost his head and needed a job, and that he also liked the job at Shoney's.
It's all I think about. Working at Shoney's,
Seems to
bro.
be. Mitchell Roberts explained that, he accepted the apology, but it was up to human resources to hire Paul back. He didn't have the power to do so. Paul's attitude then changed. Roberts escorted him, off of his porch
He's trying to get him to go
trying
on.
to get this dude to go away. I mean, his wife and child are inside the house.
He's trying to get him to get.
Yeah. Paul declares, I'm trying to turn my life around.
And you won't help me by giving me my job back at Shoney's.
After I threw a plate across the kitchen. Paul explains if he doesn't get his job at Shoney's back, he's going to have to move to Texas.
Oh, damn. So everything's riding on being employed at Shoney's.
Look, if I'm not a line cook at Shoney's, my whole world is going to turn upside down. Then, Paul Reid claimed that employees were stealing from the restaurant and told his former supervisor, I have proof in the trunk of my car. Come look.
Oh, God.
Now, Dylan, are you going to want to go look in his trunk?
I'm going to tell him to submit his proof to the corporate headquarters, wherever that is here in America, and that I believe him, and that I'm going to go inside right now and call Human Resources and see if we can't get your job back. I want you to wait right here, okay? And I would go inside, lock the door, and call the police.
Paul's trunk was filled with prepackaged steaks from the Shoney's locker. As Mitchell glances at this proof, something clicked. He was like, wait a minute. The fast food killer drives a red car.
Oh, shit.
Paul drives a red car.
Now, how long has Paul had these steaks in the trunk? Because it sounds like a minute since he hasn't worked at Shoney's, bro.
Well, that wasn't really explained, Dylan. Now, this is what I'm figuring. This is how my brain works. I'm thinking either Paul has gotten these steaks maybe from his girlfriend.
Okay. Recently.
Or there's some other Shoney's employee that is stealing these steaks and like maybe selling them at discounted prices or something.
They got the meat hook
Somebody's got, so maybe Paul has a hookup. And I'm not trying to accuse his girlfriend, but, you know, if the steak
fits,
sizzles and fits, yeah.
I think he's got like weeks old steaks in his trunk.
Maybe he's just riding around with some old rotten steaks in his trunk.
He's doing like those people in the Ford Rangers with the freezer in the bed, where they come sell you like $20,000 worth of steaks for $30.
Ugh. Come enjoy this hockey puck.
Oh man, they got the sign on the side of the truck that says like steak, seafood, chicken. Dude.
No thanks.
You could never get rid of those guys.
Wild game.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about it.
Suddenly, Paul produces a chrome-plated handgun. Paul shows Mitchell a pair of handcuffs and orders him to put them on. Paul then tells him, I have 2 men waiting behind the house, and they will shoot you dead if you refuse to wear these handcuffs. The door is about 100 feet away, so that is when Mitchell takes off toward the house. As Paul rushes to gain entry into the house, Mitchell turns and punches him in the chest. He is then able to slam the door and lock it, leaving Paul outside.
Yes, Mitchell, dude.
By the time police arrive, Paul is gone. Mitchell shared his belief that Paul was the fast food killer. While the officer was taking the report, Mitchell's phone rings, and guess what?
It's Paul.
It's Paul.
He's like, look, guy, I'm sorry I tried to kill you.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
What?
The cop is like, no way is this idiot calling here.
I
like,
didn't
what
mean
the fuck?
Mean it, but I just want you to see that
I just want my job back.
I'm so passionate about working with you, under you as my supervisor, and just being part of the team, you know? And I want to bring this kind of passion to the kitchen, bud, you know? I mean, I will kill for this, bud.
The way I make an all-American burger is unmatched.
I will kill for this job. I hope that I've proved that to you by just now trying to kill you. But, you know, I mean, what's up? You know?
The officer tells Mitchell, like, try to get him to come back over. Paul agrees. When Paul Reid arrived back at the house 45 minutes later, he is met by multiple sheriff's deputies. He'd actually gotten a housemate who barely knew him to drive him over to this property. So, of course, when all these sheriff's deputies come out guns blazing, this driver is just like, what the fuck is happening?
Right.
Like, I'm not involved in this. I don't know what's going on. They quickly let him go.
So Paul is kind of dumb.
Yes.
I mean,
to put it nicely. Paul was booked into the Chatham County Jail for assault. He was interviewed and gave law enforcement a fake birthday, November 12th of 1967. When Mitchell heard that Paul might be released, he phoned the Nashville Police Department to say he suspected that Paul was the fast food killer. He explained that Paul Reid had a knife and a gun along with driving this red car. One of Mitchell's relatives was a bail bondsman and spread word not to bond Reid out.
well, yeah, and there's also the Shoney's connection. I mean, I guess nobody's, the early on.
At the
There
Captain
was
D's Seafood.
Yeah, there was a man
witness
seen,
saw a Shoney's apron. Absolutely. So word is spread around town, like, do not bond Reid out. So he keeps calling multiple bondsmen. No one will work with him. A Nashville police officer had advised Mitchell that he should change the charges, that he should upgrade the charges to aggravated assault and attempted kidnapping, which would ensure that Paul would not be released.
Okay.
He does this. Law enforcement, now they've got Paul in custody. These charges have been upgraded. They start looking at Paul. They realize he's been giving them fake birthdays, fake IDs, and they uncover he has a history of violence and armed robbery in Texas. A new photo lineup showing Paul Reid's picture was shown to Jose Gonzalez, who again has looked at like 1,200 suspects in photo lineups, and he immediately identifies Paul.
Wow.
Paul's fingerprints were compared to the 20 latent prints left at the Captain D's crime scene. A match was found between Reid's right thumbprint on Steve Hampton's movie rental card, which had been discarded on the side of the road. At this point, they take Paul to Nashville, and he's interviewed for what detectives describe as 8 useless hours. Reid tried his best to befriend the officers and told them, quote, "I want you all to like me."
Would any of you be interested in some trunk steak? I'm just saying, I got some fillets out there.
It's such a strange interview. He says, quote, "If I'm the killer, if I'm the murderer, I guess you really shouldn't be my friend either, because that's not right." Then later he says, quote, "Let's just say I am the killer. I don't want you to, just hate me."
It's very strange.
He just wants to be friends. He just wants some friends, Dylan. Paul explained that his thumbprint on the movie card, he has an explanation for this, dude. His car overheated, and he pulled over to the side of the road to check it out. He happens to notice this card that has been discarded. He picks it up, glances at it, tosses it aside. That explains the fingerprint, and he's never been to this Captain D's Seafood restaurant, to his knowledge. He also says he's only been to that McDonald's on Donaldson once, but because he has an onion allergy,
He couldn't come back.
he asked them for no onions on his burger. They ignored this request, and he was very angry that these onions had been placed on his burger, so he never went back. There's just no way I could be the killer because I have an onion allergy.
Well, I mean, all this makes sense, honestly.
Paul insisted he wasn't the trigger man. Instead, he goes on to discuss his personality and says, quote, "I can play dumbfounded," and goes into great detail about his various grooming habits. This is the 8-hour interview.
Wow.
He expresses fear of being put in the general population when locked up. The fast food killer was no longer faceless. As news of Paul's arrest made its way to the media, several people who knew him were not surprised. He had been called Herman Munster by coworkers at Shoney's. And one of them had even called Crime Stoppers a tip line earlier, saying they thought Paul Reid was the fast food killer. Making Paul out to be an evil genius seemed more important to reporters than telling the truth, that he was just a loser who couldn't hold down a job, or that he targeted innocent young people because he was a coward who hid behind a weapon. During a search of Paul's apartment, most of his clothing was neatly hung on hangers or in plastic dry cleaning bags. They only found a white plastic outdoor chair inside the apartment.
Oh, that's all the furnishings?
Besides a bed, yeah.
Oh, okay. He's a minimalist. He was way ahead of the trend on this.
And it's described as an apartment, but really it's kind of a large house that seems like it's maybe renting rooms. You have a shared space with other housemates.
Oh, and that's one of the housemates that drove him back over
Yes, like
to
a
us.
bathroom you share, and then possibly like a shared kitchen space.
Could not live in that setup.
So yeah, he's got like maybe a bed and a white outdoor chair in his room.
Yeah.
He had several pairs of cowboy boots that were placed neatly on a shoe rack. I mean, the one thing that law enforcement would say is this guy is like immaculate, like clean, tidy, super neat. Multiple photo albums were found featuring pictures of only Paul Reid. They also found a box of hair dye. Got to cover those grays.
Maybe he was going for the frosty tips.
There were several receipts for purchases found. One of those was for $97.41, where he bought a pair of dumbbells.
Because he's got to stay fit.
Yes. They collected 4-gallon jugs containing coins, totaling over $1,000 in change. He had layered the coins according to denomination into the jugs. Shoes removed from the apartment ranged from 11.81 inches to 12.5 inches. The shoe print at the Captain D's restaurant measured 12.37 inches. So they knew Paul had basically the same shoe size as the suspect.
Right. And once you get up 12, 13, that's not as common a size, right?
It is not. A pair of white sneakers located in the apartment would eventually, they would determine, held DNA matching Angie Holmes. During interviews, Paul will claim law enforcement placed blood on those tennis shoes in an attempt to frame him.
He's a fall guy.
Speaking in the third person, he would repeatedly say, quote, Paul Reid did not kill those people.
Jimmy likes basketball.
I love when people speak in the third person.
You know, I don't know. I find it kind of off.
Heather can't wait to go in the kitchen and check on the soup.
Have you ever met somebody that truly speaks in third person like that?
Heather can't wait to eat the corn chowder that's simmering on the stovetop right now.
Well, Dylan can't wait either. Have you ever known someone?
I don't think, nothing comes to mind.
Right.
Maybe here and there I've heard someone refer to themselves like, and I always think, who are you? Like fucking Napoleon or something?
Right.
Paul's car was searched. Investigators noted the back door locks were in child lock position. Investigators felt the car was almost, quote, too clean.
Like it had recently been cleaned really good.
Yes. 3 fibers consistent with Angie Holmes' clothing were taken from the back seat and the floor mats. Fibers found on Michelle's clothing and shoes were consistent with fibers from the back seat of the car, the carpet, and the floor mats. 11 fibers matched one source, which according to the forensic analyst was rare. That this was a lot of fibers to get from one source. Investigators spent like 13 hours processing this car. Meticulous processing. While Paul was in jail, he phoned his housemate and told him where to locate a key to open a locker that was in his room. When the man obliged, he found a box of vinyl gloves with what appeared to be blood on them.
Yeah, I just need you to throw those bloody gloves away, if you will.
Well, of course, this guy calls police. The physical descriptions witnesses had given during the course of the robberies were consistent with Paul Reid. While incarcerated, Reid was cited for disciplinary actions. One of those was issued on October 7th of 1997 for having sex with a fellow inmate.
Oh.
An inmate was caught, quote, masturbating Reid through the cell door.
Oh.
I should also mention that this inmate was a child predator who was later convicted basically of being a piece of shit pedophile, put in jail.
Well, I mean, He's wanking this guy through the door. I mean, I kind of knew that he might have some deviant. I mean, I'm just saying it's a little odd. Right?
Notes exchanged between the two inmates were discovered. Officers also found a chicken bone hidden in a light fixture inside Paul's cell. He had fashioned this chicken bone into a shank.
Oh.
Yes.
Never thought of that. Making a shank out of a chicken bone. I mean, actually kind of smart.
The defense hired a neurophysiologist specializing in brain abnormalities named Dr. Obel to interview Reid. She concluded there was evidence of left frontal lobe damage causing a significant mental disorder that would affect his behavior in a, quote, pervasive way. It was determined that his IQ was in the low 60s, with his verbal IQ being in the 50s. On April 12th of 1999, the trial for the Captain D's case began. Mike Engel was Reid's court-appointed attorney. He was known for being a strong opponent of the death penalty. Paul entered the courtroom like he was making a red carpet appearance. He waved to the prosecutor. He smiled at the jury and the victims' families.
Hey, guys.
Yeah.
Just
King Paul here.
King Paul for the day.
I'm going to go sit down over here at this table. I'm going to make myself a little hat. I might make one for my lawyer.
I don't know.
It's a good day.
Feeling guilty?
Let me tell you what else this dude did, Dylan. Paul tried to slip a note to the victim and witness coordinator who sits with the families during the trial, asking, quote, "Will you write me in prison?"
He's still trying to be a Mac.
What is wrong with this dude?
Look, and we're certainly not equating low IQ with violence.
No.
He's just a violent monster.
He's just a hot mess.
He's a monster who happens to have a lower IQ, right?
Well, I only mention it because, I mean,
well,
it
matters.
A little goofy.
It matters in the scheme of things as to how he conducts himself. It kind of puts things in perspective. But I just wanted to clarify that we've never equated low IQs and violence.
No.
Yeah.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Well, you know,
it was my main concern.
I'm a master at clarifying things that don't need clarified. So, you know, just trying to keep it up.
Okay. Maybe go clarify some butter. Let's get back to this. The defense only called one witness, and it was not Paul Reid. It was this psychophysiologist, neuro doctor.
To say that he had frontal lobe damage
Yeah.
and blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
Well, okay. And? I mean...
Right. Well, the jury, they were like, and, right, okay. They found Paul Reid guilty of 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder, guilty of 2 counts of first-degree felony murder, and guilty of especially aggravated robbery. So while everyone is waiting for the verdict, news broke of a shooting at Columbine High School.
Wow.
The verdict came in on April 20th of 1999. After deliberating for only 2 hours and 35 minutes, the jury sentenced Paul Reid to the death penalty. The Clarksville trial began on September 11th of 1999. All involved felt this trial had the best evidence. They had fibers, DNA, and witnesses. The defense tried to say Reid wasn't competent to stand trial due to his previous head injuries. However, another doctor testified for the prosecution and described Reid as, quote, malingering, and said there was nothing wrong with him except he had an antisocial personality disorder. So Paul was ordered to stand trial. Paul's best friend, a guy named Danny, testified that Paul was broke and had made multiple comments about robbing fast food restaurants to get some money.
So Paul told his entire plan to someone.
Yes.
Which does not surprise me.
On September 29th, Paul was found guilty of murdering Angie and Michelle. He received 2 more death sentences. And it was on May 22nd of 2000, the trial began for the McDonald's slayings and attempted murder. He was found guilty and given 3 more death sentences for a total of 7, the most ever handed down to a single person in the state of Tennessee.
Now, can I say... See, Tennessee did what I think should always be done. They held him to account for every single victim.
Yes.
And they didn't get a guilty verdict on 2 and he already got death. Well, we're not going, he's going to, pay. Everybody had their time in court. Everybody was represented. And I think that should be the standard practice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure from what I read, each trial costs between like $175 to like $200,000 to try them.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's what it's about. It's about cost. And they'll, when you have multiple victims, multiple different, scenes and crimes, a lot of times, we've seen it before where they just, get the couple of verdicts and they say, well, that's good enough. And they don't actually put them on trial for killing all these other people.
Reid died at Nashville General Hospital on November 1st of 2013. He broke his neck. I'm just kidding.
I was like, dang, no way, dude.
Just kidding. He'd been in the hospital for about 2 weeks with pneumonia, heart failure, and upper respiratory issues.
Oh, that's called fate.
Yeah.
So they didn't get to kill him.
They did not get to execute him. The state did not carry out execution.
Well, we know they wasn't
Paul
going.
Reid.
We know they wasn't going to hang his ass. There wasn't no way.
Need a big old rope for
The
that.
executioner's like, it's not going to work.
I bet, you know what? Like, he would not be a prime candidate for the guillotine.
No.
How would you cut through that big old, thick, muscly neck?
You couldn't.
That has been the story of Paul Reid.
Okay, so
The fast food killer.
I totally missed this back when it happened. I'm going to guess it was partially in the shadow of Columbine, as far as on the news cycles and such. And this was, what year was 9/11? 2001 or 2000?
2001.
2001. So, yeah. Okay.
Actually, one of our listeners, Chris, was living in Tennessee at the time. He said the story was all over the news.
It was huge.
He remembered it being all
Okay.
over the news at the time. One of my main resources for today's case is a book called When Nashville Bled, The Untold Stories of Serial Killer Paul Reid by Judith Yates. And with it being a more recent case, there are tons of newspaper articles and information available. So I used quite a few articles from newspapers.
Yeah, and it's said that Busta Rhymes song was about Paul Reid. Check your neck.
There's also that Wu-Tang song about protect your neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Heather. That was very interesting. And I'm glad that guy died. I wish he had died sooner.
Yeah.
Before he killed all those innocent people.
Still have not recovered a demo tape. We do not get to hear Paul Reid's country music.
I don't think anybody digitized any of those tapes, bud. Maybe there's one floating around in a cardboard box somewhere.
Oh man, maybe somebody will find it at like a Goodwill
Oh no, what was
yard sale.
The Sony tape where you can like write the titles on the outside cover, it's got the lines.
This is the Maxwell, baby.
The Maxwell. I was about to say
Maxwell.
Dude, Maxwell popped in my head and I was like, is that right? Because it was.
All right, Dylan. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.